A brand new Peugeot 405 rolling off the assembly line in the year 2024, nearly 3 decades after the rest of the world stopped making them, and people are lining up to buy it like it's the hottest car on the planet. Sounds impossible, right? Well, welcome to Iran, where the automotive industry exists in a time warp that would make Doc Brown scratch his head. If you think you've seen everything the car world has to offer, I guarantee you haven't seen this. Stick around, because what's happening in Iran's car market is stranger than fiction, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why this isolated automotive ecosystem might actually hold lessons for the entire global industry. But before we dive in, smash that like button and hit subscribe, because we're about to take you on a journey to the most unusual car market on Earth, and trust me, you won't want to miss a single twist. Hey, this is Mark, and you're welcome to AUTOSAYS. Now, let's talk about how a nation of over 80 million people ended up driving cars that the rest of the world forgot existed. To understand Iran's bizarre automotive situation, we need to rewind the clock back to 1979, a year that changed everything. The Iranian Revolution didn't just transform politics and society, it set in motion a chain of events that would eventually isolate the country from the global economy in ways that are still playing out today. Fast forward to the early 2000s, and sanctions started tightening like a noose around Iran's neck, particularly after international concerns about the country's nuclear program intensified. Here's where it gets interesting for car enthusiasts. When Western automakers pulled out of Iran due to these sanctions, they didn't just close up shop and leave empty factories behind. They abandoned partnerships, technology transfers, and entire production lines that Iranian companies had come to depend on. Imagine waking up one day and every major car manufacturer you've ever heard of just vanishes from your country. No more Toyota trucks rolling in from Japan, no more Volkswagens from Germany, no more Peugeots from France. Just gone. For most countries, this would be an automotive apocalypse, but Iran did something unexpected, something that created one of the most unique car markets in human history. They kept building the old models, and I mean old models. We're talking about cars that were discontinued in Europe and Asia in the 1990s and early 2000s, still being manufactured with barely any updates for the modern era. The Peugeot 405, which ceased production in France back in 1997, is still being built by Iran Khodro, the country's largest automaker, and it's not just sitting in warehouses collecting dust. People are actually buying these things. But wait, you might be thinking, why would anyone buy a car that's technologically ancient when better options exist? Here's the brutal reality. They don't have better options, at least not affordable ones. When sanctions cut off access to international markets, Iranian consumers found themselves trapped in an automotive bubble where choice became a luxury they couldn't afford. The average Iranian family doesn't have the option to stroll into a dealership and choose between a Honda Civic, a Toyota Camry, or a Hyundai Sonata like you might in Detroit or Los Angeles. Instead, they're choosing between a Peugeot 405 that's essentially a rolling museum piece, a Pride, which is actually a rebadged Kia that stopped being cool when grunge music died, or maybe, if they're lucky, a Samand, which is an Iranian-designed car that borrowed heavily from Peugeot and Nissan technology from the 90s. And here's the kicker that'll blow your mind. These cars are expensive, ridiculously expensive considering what you're actually getting. Due to limited production capacity, high demand, and the absence of foreign competition, a basic Iranian-made car can cost the equivalent of several years of an average worker's salary. Imagine paying $40,000 or $50,000 for a car with the safety features, fuel efficiency, and technology of something from the Clinton administration. That's the reality millions of Iranians face every single day. But the story gets even stranger when you look at what happened to the supply chain. Remember how I mentioned those international partnerships that got abandoned? Well, Iranian manufacturers suddenly found themselves without access to the parts and components they needed to build cars. So what did they do? They got creative, really creative. Iranian engineers started reverse engineering parts, finding domestic suppliers who could manufacture components that previously came from Europe or Asia, and in some cases they simply redesigned systems to work with whatever materials and technology they could access locally. It's like automotive MacGyver, except instead of defusing bombs with paper clips, they're building entire cars with whatever they can get their hands on. This forced innovation led to something fascinating, a completely isolated automotive ecosystem that evolved independently from the rest of the world. While global manufacturers were developing hybrid engines, advanced safety systems, and connectivity features, Iranian car makers were perfecting the art of keeping decades-old designs alive with minimal resources. It's parallel automotive evolution, like discovering an island where cars evolved completely differently from the mainland. Now, you might be wondering, has anyone tried to smuggle in foreign cars? Oh, absolutely. And this is where the black market enters our story, with all the drama of a Hollywood thriller. Despite strict import restrictions, luxury foreign vehicles have found their way into Iran through elaborate smuggling operations, gray market imports, and diplomatic channels. Walk through wealthy neighborhoods in Tehran, and you'll spot Mercedes-Benzes, BMWs, and even the occasional Porsche, vehicles that cost multiples of their international prices and exist in a legal gray zone that most owners would rather not discuss. These imported cars become status symbols beyond anything you'd see in Beverly Hills, because they represent not just wealth, but access to a world that's been cut off from ordinary Iranians. The financial gymnastics required to own a foreign car in Iran would make your head spin. People use cryptocurrency, offshore accounts, and complex barter arrangements just to get their hands on a vehicle that you could finance at your local dealership with decent credit. But here's what really keeps me up at night, and what should concern anyone who cares about automotive safety. These aging Iranian cars are death traps by modern standards. We're talking about vehicles that lack basic safety features that have been mandatory in developed countries for over 2 decades. No advanced airbag systems, no electronic stability control, no crumple zones designed with modern crash test data. Nothing. Studies have shown that Iran's traffic fatality rate is significantly higher than comparable countries, and while driver behavior plays a role, the age and safety standards of the vehicle fleet are major factors. Families are driving around in cars that would never pass safety inspections in the United States or Europe, and they have no alternative, because the sanctions have effectively frozen their automotive market in time.
And just when you think this situation couldn't get more complex, there's actually a glimmer of hope on the horizon, though whether it'll materialize remains anyone's guess. During brief periods of sanctions relief, foreign automakers have tested the waters of returning to Iran. Peugeot, Renault, and others have signed agreements to resume production or imports, dangling the possibility of modern vehicles before Iranian consumers, like a mirage in the desert. But geopolitics keeps getting in the way. Sanctions get reimposed, deals fall through, and Iranian car buyers remain stuck in their automotive time warp, watching the rest of the world drive into the future while they are left behind at the starting line. Here's the part that should make every car enthusiast think twice about how fortunate we are in Western markets. Iranians have developed an incredible car culture, despite, or maybe because of, these limitations. Enthusiast communities have sprung up around modifying and improving these outdated vehicles, squeezing every bit of performance and style out of cars that were never meant to be performance machines. Iranian mechanics have become masters of keeping ancient vehicles running long past their intended lifespan, developing tricks and techniques that would impress even the most seasoned Western technicians. There's a resilience and creativity in Iran's automotive scene that's genuinely inspiring, even if it's born from necessity rather than choice. So what does all this mean for the global automotive industry? Well, Iran represents both a cautionary tale and an untapped opportunity. It's a cautionary tale about what happens when political isolation meets consumer markets, how entire populations can become trapped in technological stagnation through no fault of their own. But it's also a massive opportunity. Iran has one of the youngest populations in the Middle East, with millions of potential car buyers who've been waiting decades for access to modern, safe, efficient vehicles. If and when sanctions eventually ease permanently, Iran could become one of the hottest automotive markets on the planet, and manufacturers who position themselves early could reap enormous rewards. The companies that can navigate the complex political landscape and establish themselves in Iran before their competitors might find themselves with a loyal customer base that's been starved of choice for generations. But let's bring this back to what it means for you, sitting comfortably in America with access to hundreds of vehicle models, competitive pricing, and safety standards that, while sometimes annoying, actually save lives. The Iranian car market is a reminder of just how much we take for granted. When you complain about the price of a new truck or debate whether to get the premium sound system, remember that there are millions of people who would give anything just to have that choice, who are driving around in vehicles that belong in museums, paying premium prices for outdated technology because international politics decided their fate. Iran's automotive isolation has created a market that's unique, troubled, and absolutely fascinating in equal measure. It's a place where economics, history, politics, and engineering collide in ways that have never happened anywhere else on Earth. From Peugeots that refuse to die, to black market Benzes that cost more than houses, from engineers performing miracles with limited resources, to consumers making impossible choices. Iran's automotive market is a story that deserves to be told because it reveals truths about global trade, human resilience, and the automotive industry that you won't find in any other market on the planet. So the next time you're browsing your local dealership or scrolling through cars online, take a moment to appreciate the incredible luxury of choice you have, because somewhere in Tehran, someone's trying to decide if they can afford a brand new car from 1997. And that's not a joke. That's just another day in the most unusual car market that nobody talks about.